Join Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio, the host of Only the Best for You. Be a change maker and unlock the secret to your best life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Global Voice Radio show, Only the Best for You. My name is Carol Davies. I'm the success coach of the Passion Motivated Coaching Company, and I'm so pleased to share with you the best information and speakers about how you can be a change maker to make the world and yourself the best you can be. Today, I'm very fortunate to be interviewing a very dynamic and well-known coach, Nancy Becher, who is from Business Success Unlimited. And she has just a wealth of knowledge and experience that truly amazes me. Nancy dreams of a world that runs on the vibrancy of thousands of small businesses, all working together, making money, and living in great supportive communities. As an author, a journalist, and a business consultant for more than 30 years, she has worked with hundreds of companies, large and small, throughout the United States and internationally, helping them create strategies and processes that are built to give them more revenues, less stress, and raving fans. While knowing that starting and growing a business is hard work, she also believes that there needs to be fun involved. And her approach to helping others is to share with them the concept of not waiting till pigs fly to get out there and get started. Her first book, Baby Steps to Starting and Running Your Own Business, will be out in the early fall. Practical tips and techniques can be found on her website at www.don'twaittillpigsfly.com. That's DONTWAITTILPIGSFLY. And that is also the name of her podcast on Global Voice Radio. We are so pleased that Nancy had the time to speak with us today. And I would like to ask her just to give us a few words about how did you get started in the coaching business?
Oh, that's a long story. I have been an entrepreneur since I was 12 years old. I've had some sort of business since then, and that's been quite a few years ago now. I won't say how many. But I lived in the Washington, D.C. area for about 35 years. And I owned an executive suites there and had a lot of tenants that would come to me and they would ask me questions like, hey, Nancy, do you know how to do such and such? Or, Nancy, is there someone out there that can help me with my marketing or my sales? Or, they were always asking me questions on how to do things. And I got to thinking that I had spent many years trying to answer for myself and my business exactly the same type of questions that they were asking me, and how much easier it was for them to move their business forward by having someone else there holding their hand and giving them the tips and strategies that they needed to grow their business that I hadn't had, because when I started, it was just do it on your own or read a book. And there wasn't the internet. There wasn't all the wonderful things that we have now. So I actually started working with my clients back in DC. I don't consider myself a coach so much as I do a consultant. I have a master's degree in counseling, and coaches and counselors are generally encouraged to ask their clients questions and get the clients to figure out often for themselves the answers to their questions. For me, I just want to hit them on the back of the head and say, hey, silly, this is what you need to do. You know, I create those processes and strategies for them. I don't want them to have to do all of the figuring out on their own. I want to be there to help them. And I want to have a community around us all where we can each share and create these strategies.
Well, I think that's very interesting that you bring up the difference between coach, counselor, and consultant, because what you're saying is quite valid. There's room in the area where, you know, we help people to get going forward for each one of those. And I think you explained quite clearly, you know, the difference between the three, because I know I have been frequently asked, you know, the difference, like, am I a coach? Am I a counselor? Because I do have a certain amount of training, you know, similar to you as well. And I like the fact that you consider yourself a consultant, because you have that knowledge and expertise that people need to get going. You know, they can get on the ground running with you. Whereas sometimes with coaching, you know, it's you ask the questions and, you know, it's more the back and forth. So I think that's quite exciting that we have people like you in, you know, the business consulting and coaching community that give us such great, you know, ideas and advice. So do you find that clients tend to come to you during times of need, or when they are going through difficulties? How do you tend to get your clients?
That's an interesting question, Carol, and it's one that I'm struggling a bit with and am working on changing, because oftentimes there are so many coaches and consultants that hang up their shields out there, and oftentimes you'll hear about someone who, well, there's the book that was written on the 4-hour work week, and people talking about how they started their career when they were homeless and living in their car, and 6 months later they were earning 7 figures. And I just don't believe that in general that happens. For some it may, but I think for the vast majority of people it doesn't. And so I often get people calling me thinking, oh, especially since I create these strategies for them, that I'll just put it all in place for them, and bam, they'll have this up and going business with nothing they have to do except sit back, put their feet up, and collect the money. And that's not true. I very clearly, when I talk to my clients and potential clients, say that this is going to take some time, and this is going to take some effort, and there's work that you have to put into this. I can give you the strategies, but you have to create them. So the people that come to me are truly the ones that are hungry for business success. They're the ones that want more than a hobby. They're looking at that 7-figure income, and not, you know, a $200 a month go out to dinner kind of thing. And that's fine. If somebody is only looking for a side hustle, that's fine. But the people that I work with really want to make successful businesses. They are also well aware that it's going to take them time, money, and energy to get there. So I don't want the real quick, let's do this and get it over with. I want those that are willing to work to get what they want.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I think that that opens up sort of some very valid areas that I wanted to explore with you because, as you know, challenge and change are facts of life. And it's how we deal with the unexpected or stressful times that can show how we're going to succeed in life or perhaps find difficulties. So I was curious about how do you deal with unexpected or stressful times?
Oh, that's a big question, and it varies for each of us, obviously. But for me, um, I have to just step back. I create quite frequently, at least once a year. I will create a picture of where I want to be in the future, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how much money I'm making, the whole gamut of my life. And when I have a stressful time coming up, or if I know that things are taking a turn in a direction that I hadn't planned, I will get out that picture. I will get out that roadmap that I've created and said, okay, is this still where I want to be going? And if you got to listen to your gut, and internally, if my gut says, yeah, that I totally believe this is where I'm meant to be, and other people may have a different feeling on this, but I believe that God has given me these talents and this ability, and this is where he wants me to be. So I just kind of have to sit back and say, okay, we've got to get from where we are to where we're going and just kind of roll with the stress. And that's not easy. And there are days that it's really hard to do. But if I just keep telling myself this will pass, you need to be looking forward, you need to be moving to the direction you want to move, then eventually I'll kick myself in the butt and I'll get up and I'll get going again.
So, with what you've been describing, how you work with yourself, do you work in that way with your clients as well, or just yourself?
No, absolutely. I think it's very important that we have a goal, that we have at least a general idea of where we want to be. And if we, as business owners in general, can figure out, I only want to make a couple of $100 a month, or I want to make $50,000 a month, then that will lead you to what you have to do to accomplish those goals. And I don't think anybody should start a business without having some sort of a roadmap to where it is they're going. I tell the story of when I was growing up. We would go on vacations in the summer. My mom and my dad would we had AAA insurance, and they would go down to the office and they would ask for what AAA called at the time a triptych. And that triptych was a book of continuing maps that led from where we were to where we wanted to go. And you'd keep flipping the pages as you went driving down those roads, but it was highlighted, and they would show you the different roads. They'd show you if there were detours. It would highlight places where you could stop for a good meal or where to stop for the night. And I envision this creation that I work with my clients on as being similar to that triptych. if you know that you're starting out at point A and you want to get to point B, you're not going to go way off on a sidetrack unless that's something you want. But if you have no idea of where you're going, it's you get in your car, you turn on the engine, and you just drive. You may not have any idea of where you're heading to, and who knows where you're going to go. So I create this roadmap with each one of my clients.
I think that sounds extremely logical and important. So what you're saying is that if we're not clear on where we want to be going, we may never get there, or we may get perhaps to a destination we weren't planning.
Absolutely.
I think that's really excellent advice of what you're doing with the clients. So when you find that clients contact you for, say, an initial session, or, to discuss if you'd be, a good match to work, how do you think that they are finding you? What is it about you that attracts them?
Again, that's an excellent question. And I think that's one that as business owners, we all need to think about and try to open ourselves up to. We talk about finding the ideal client. And often somebody will open a business and they'll say, okay, my doors are open. Where are my clients? And that's all they do. They just sit and they wait for their clients to come. And you say, well, who do you work with? And they'll say, well, anyone, can use my service or my product. And that's like standing with your back to a dartboard and throwing darts, hoping you're going to hit the bullseye. But if you create this target market or this ideal client, and only them, then more people are going to come to you because they're going to know exactly what it is that you do. And if that resonates with them, they're going to come to you. So I have a variety of ways in which I let people know I exist and what I do. And a lot of that is through my podcast, through webinars that I do, through Facebook posts. And I'm very careful at the words that I use. The words on my website are all geared to my specific ideal client. So that if someone reads it and says, oh my goodness, she's going to ask us to do work and we have to fill out these forms and I'm not going to do that, they're going to run screaming in the other direction because I say right in everything I do that this takes work. Yet if you're reading something that I've written and you see this, but it says, if you do this work, you are guaranteed that you will grow your business. And they go, well, that's what I want. And I don't mind doing the work to do it. So that's who I want to work with. I'm not going to tell them they're going to be able to get a 7-figure income in 6 months. That's unrealistic. And what I want all my clients to know is that I'm honest with them. I'm telling them the way it is. I am going to do everything in my power to help them, but they have to take part in it as well. And when they see those things, and if that resonates with them, they come.
I think that sounds extremely valid as an approach because, for example, if I was reading, your website and I was, having some tough times and feeling like a failure, and then suddenly I read something on your website or heard something in one of your webinars about, I can help you change your life around, and here's the way to do it. I think that's extremely positive and encouraging because especially if, I'm feeling really down and depressed and whatever. I think if I'm ready and open to ask for help, you certainly would be one of the people I would want to call, because
Thank you.
many people I see in my own practice, and that they've failed a lot of times. They've got a very poor self-image. They don't believe in themselves anymore. How would you work with, say, a client who came to you like that, willing to do the work, but just so afraid and thinking, I'm never going to succeed? How could you help turn them around?
I try to be very, very positive with everyone, and any little thing that they do that moves themselves even the tiniest bit forward is a celebration. I mean, picture a little bitty row of ants. You're having a picnic and there goes this row of ants and they're carrying away a sandwich. It may take a bunch of them to get that sandwich out of there, and it may take them a long, long time to do it, but they do it. And you have to go, yay, congratulations, you've actually succeeded. Well, the same thing is true when someone is trying. They've got their goal, they've got their dream, they really want to be a success. They first have to figure out what success means to them. And then I help them to create these small wins along the way. And anytime that they complete something, there's a congratulations, yay. There's a supportive environment. There's never anything that is, well, geez, you said you were going to get this done today and it's not done, so go away. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. And but it's all encouragement, and that makes you feel better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that what you've mentioned about setting people up in small steps to find that success, that's extremely positive and encouraging, because we hear so many things in our lives where people, they don't support us, they don't celebrate maybe the small successes we have. And to have someone like yourself there in their corner is so important. It really, I think, makes all the difference, because when people are ready to make that change, to stop feeling like a failure, or learn from what's happened in the past, having, I think, a positive role model like yourself is really excellent. So
Well, thank you.
I say to you, congratulations for that approach.
Thank you very much.
It's really not the norm.
Well, and we all know that life is not easy. There are stressful times. There are unexpected things that happen. And if you're totally surrounded by negativity, the more of that happens, the more negative you're going to feel. And if you can just get somebody, giving you a pat on the back and saying, good going, and you did this, and come on, you can do more, and let's get this moving. That's really important, and it helps you move more quickly through those bad times.
Mm-hmm. Let's say you've been working with a client for a while and they've been, doing pretty good, and then suddenly they get stuck and they're not making the progress they want. What would you advise them to do?
The way I work with clients is twofold. There's a group where they work with other people, and then there's the one-on-one consulting that we do. And different focus between the two groups, but hopefully for most of my clients, they take part in both sides of the equation. And on the one-on-one side, I will sit down with them and I'll say, okay, let's look at, because we create not only this roadmap, this big picture out a year, 5 years, but we also create series of small SMART goals. And within those SMART goals, I do something that's a little bit different than what a lot of people do. And I add what are called the small wins, basically to-dos that get you to the conclusion of the one SMART goal. So, for example, a small goal for me may be to get 100 new names on my email list by a certain period of time. That's fine. And that's a great goal to have. But how am I going to accomplish that? I can't just say, all right, 100 names are going to easily appear on my email list and I've done nothing to do it. They're just going to show up. That's not going to happen. So I have to create these to-dos or small wins in which to create this goal. So it might be something like putting an ad on Facebook that if you sign up for my tip sheet, you will receive this free, SMART goal template. And that gets done. When I do that, it gets checked off and I move on to the next one. That provides me with that small win that makes me feel better and the support. Yet it also gives me the ability to sit down with my clients and say, okay, we've got this SMART goal. We've got these to-dos and they're not getting accomplished. Why not? And then I often start getting excuses. Well, I've been busy. I've been this. And I help walk them through what those excuses really mean. There's a reason that something's not getting accomplished. And by working on it together, we can figure that out. Or we may figure out that this just really isn't something that they really want. And we move on to something different. But we don't just let it sit there in isolation. We figure out what it is we need to do, how to do it, and when. And that moves them forward.
Mm-hmm. So do you have a time frame that you try to set up with the clients? Like, we're starting now and then maybe 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, you want to be at X place, or are you a bit more fluid?
Well, yes and no. We have each SMART goal that we have is geared around a time frame. And it might be by the end of this week, I want to have X, Y, and Z done. And by getting X, Y, and Z done, that allows me then in a month's time to have something bigger done. We start out working with the 5-year plan and then we move backwards. And each goal that's created is one thing. I want to make 10 phone calls. I want to do 1 podcast. I want to talk to 6 people, whatever. And each one of those goals has a time frame attached to it. I think that I can have this completed by such and such a date. Theoretically, we want to try and get to that date, and by that date say this is completed. Life happens. Things happen. It's not a big deal if those things don't get accomplished by that timeline, if whatever they're attached to down the road has a fluid timeline. But if I'm having a webinar on May 17th, I can't wait until May 16th to get 10 people to sign up for it. That's got to be done sooner. So it can be fluid and it can be more rigid. It depends on what the goal is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I think from what you're saying that it's not difficult, but not the usual thing for people to think in terms of working, on specific goals. We, generally we have an idea where we want to go, and sometimes we might get there, other times we sort of get somewhere else. And I think it's a question of you've got to be crystal clear about what your dream is, where you want to go. How would you suggest that people get clear on something like that?
I think that goes back to the 1 year or the 5-year plan. How I tell people to do this plan is to sit back in a quiet space, maybe have, and this depends on how each individual person works, but for me, I'll sit back, I'll play some relaxing music, something probably without voice to it, but just music that's kind of a meditation type music. And I'll just sit back, close my eyes, and picture myself in the future. And I focus on details, but without pushing myself to focus on these details. I just want to take a look at my life in the future. And after I've seen that, I will open my eyes and I'll start to write things down. And as I'm writing, it becomes clear. But it's not one of these things where I force myself to say, I am going to be making $100,000 in 5 years. I'm going to be having 5 mastermind groups. It's what comes out of my unconscious, because then I know that that's really what I believe internally is what I want. And I encourage my clients to do that as well, to really picture for themselves, to paint a picture. And interestingly, when I did this the first time, I had been doing my mastermind programs. I'd been doing one-on-one consulting. I have an annual weekend business retreat, and I had been publishing a magazine for 9 years. Writing, editing, designing it, the whole works. I had authors that wrote for me, but the magazine was mine. And it was a monthly magazine of about 64 pages that we did every single month for 9 years. And when I'm writing this 5-year plan, I stopped, I was done, and I read it. And nowhere in that plan did I mention doing anything with that magazine. And I realized at the time that I read this, that magazine had been driving me crazy for about the last 6 months. I couldn't get writers. I couldn't get the writers I had to get me the materials on time. I kept losing my graphic designer. It was more of a problem child for me than it was a benefit any longer. I was making money from it, but it wasn't something I wanted to do any longer. And within a month, I had stopped it. I was no longer doing it. And to this day, I miss it. I love that magazine. I love saying, I'm the editor of this beautiful, it was on shelves in bookstores in Canada, in the United States. I had bookstores in Michigan and bookstores in Indiana. We were on the way to getting it in Barnes and Nobles. And I miss it, and I miss the ability to say, this is mine. But I don't miss it. And I realize how much I'm glad that I'm not doing it any longer. And that, I think, is all a part of allowing yourself the freedom to discover who you are and what you want to be doing down the road.
Those are extremely powerful sentiments that you've just been talking about, because it seems apparent to me that the magazine was a very, very integral part of who you were in your business for many years, and then suddenly you were struggling with it, and you found that things weren't right, but you were clever enough to take the time to diagnose what is not working. And then you made another plan. Now, did you consider yourself a failure because the magazine ended?
Absolutely not. I would only have been a failure if I had continued to do it and allowed it to go down and go down and go down. I ended on everybody loved that magazine. Everybody was sorry to see it go. You know, people were saying, oh, you got to bring it back. You got to bring it back. I learned some great lessons from it. I learned how to take what I was doing with the magazine, and I'm now kind of doing the same thing with my blogs and my podcast. And so I've brought the training and the knowledge that I got from doing that magazine. I'm bringing that into what I'm doing now. And absolutely not. I definitely don't consider it a failure. I think it was a great learning experience and very successful for many years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all need to realize that our lives, the times, my newsletter that I used to produce was a big part of my life in my business back in Washington, D.C. People don't do newsletters like, print them and hand them out everywhere anymore. Things change. You have to learn that something that was done at one point in time may no longer be what you want to do, or may no longer be what somebody else wants you to do. And just because your life changes, because what you're doing's changing, doesn't mean, I don't believe in failures. I really don't. I think that everything you do leads you to a new place in life. And that's good.
It is definitely good, because, what you're saying, like the writing skills that you developed, the planning, learning how to work with different types of writers, graphic people, they had skills that you didn't do. So in a sense, you learned project management skills out of that. And mm-hmm. Those are things that, just because the magazine now perhaps is not in existence, you haven't lost those skills in any way.
Right.
And it made you a stronger person. Like yep. For myself, last year, I did quite a series of half-hour radio interviews where I, had to speak on different subjects and whatever. And I had never done that before. And I used to be terrified. And then at the end of it, I was so relaxed. And then, like you, the opportunity to be doing a podcast popped up. And it was like, going in and knowing how to swim already. So I think we could maybe generalize from what we're both saying, in that when you go through hard times or things where you're not comfortable or you're struggling, you can grow from that, because you come through stronger if you don't give up.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's getting into history here, but over the period of time that I've been in business, I've had some really good years. I had some years where I had 10 employees doing things. They weren't actually employees, they were contractors, but they were working for me, down to just me. And then other times I've had some extreme illnesses, which almost put me out of business. I had eye problems a few years ago, and I couldn't work for almost 2 years, and I had turned my office over to my operations manager, who basically just ran the business into the ground. And so when I got back to work, and it was a problem where I was blind for 2 years, so I couldn't go in and check over her work and all of this. I could call and find out what was going on, but by the time I got back to work, I had no business any longer. She'd run everybody away. Since we moved, so you had to start all over again and start building from scratch. And then my husband and I moved from DC back to Michigan to take care of my parents, and that brought on a whole other area of issues that you have to deal with. And for a long time, and then I was in a very, very bad car accident, and for a long time I just sat in a corner and said, do I really want to go on? Is this, do I want to even get up and get going on this? And it really shows you at times like that whether you truly want to and have the desire, the dream to go on. And as you can see, obviously, for me at least, it was each one of those situations taught me something that I bring with me into where I am now, and allows me the opportunity to be compassionate with my clients, to understand some of the things they're going through, to be able to share with them, well, I get what you're talking about because I've been right there with you. I know these things because I'm not just placating you. I've done it. I've been there. I understand. And that creates a level of trust between my clients and myself. It creates a vulnerability in me that I can share with them that shows, well, Nancy's done this, so maybe I can as well. And it's just, you gotta be honest, and you've gotta accept and move through things that happen in life, or you're just going to become stagnant and you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, I think you are an excellent example of someone who triumphs over adversity, because the story you shared with us just now, it could have meant, say, if somebody else, that could have been it. They might have just sunk into depression and given up. But what I understand you're saying is that there's something in you and in other people where you have strengths you can draw on, and you don't give up, but it makes you stronger. So, having, pain and struggle isn't necessarily 100% negative. It can also drive us forward, which, from what I'm hearing from you, seems to have happened. And it's quite inspiring, actually.
Well, thank you. It really, it's inspiring for me too, when I think about it, because I'll think, how did that happen? But it's been quite a journey, and I sit back and I look at where I was, and I look at this roadmap that I've created, and there have been a lot of detours and bridges out. You have to go sideways and around and all of this, but I have an endpoint in mind, and by golly, I'm going to get there come hook or by crook, and it's one of those things that if I just continue to learn from what I'm doing and apply those lessons, then I'm going to get to where I want to be.
Well,
You have to also realize that it's not easy and that it takes time. And anyone wanting to create a business where they work for a couple hours a week and they make lots and lots of money, it's not going to happen. I don't believe that will happen.
No, I do agree with you there, because we have to make things a priority and important in our lives. And for most of us, having a business brings in money and income that we need to live. It isn't manna from heaven floating down and then, you pick up a bit and life is all roses. It's not all, black either.
Right.
But you do have to have that roadmap that you're talking about, and the goals and your sense of purpose. And with that, you're guaranteed that things are going to work. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I have an excellent example right now of my latest detour. Christmas Eve, I fell and I broke my hand, and it's still broken, and I cannot use my hand at all. It's frozen, and I don't have the cast on right now because I wear a brace, and I'm just trying to rest my arm a little bit. But as a consequence, what is it that I do mostly now? I put posts up on Facebook, I write blogs, I do all of this kind of stuff. And guess what? I can't type. There's no way I can use my hand. So once again, I could have said, all right, I guess I'm out of business. But you know what I did? I went and I found Dragon software and I downloaded it onto my computer, and I do everything by voice now. And people can't tell the difference, unless I tell them. So I am able to continue with my business by finding a new technique and a new strategy to get me where I want to go. And that's what it's all about.
So you didn't let this upsetting incident hold you back. What happened was it motivated you to find another strategy that would work for you. And it's quite innovative. And I think you should feel quite proud and pleased with yourself, because it is a great solution. I had heard of Dragon years back because when I worked in the United Nations, that was back in the 90s and the 2000s, they used Dragon for their, conference documents and doing this and that. And it was always amazing to me to see what it could do. Of course, back then, you had to sort of train it to your voice, whereas now it's much improved. But I always had fun using it. And I'm sure with you now, you found a good solution, but it's probably, do you find it's fun to use to a certain extent?
Yeah, it is now. It took me a while because I was dealing both with frustration because I just wanted to. I typed 140 words a minute, so it was a little bit frustrating in the beginning. It was frustrating because I couldn't do it any longer, and you still do have to do some training, and you have to learn how to use it. And I've used it for years and years too, but it's in the new version, there are changes, and I had to go from what I used to know to what I know now, but it's freeing. It just allows me to kind of go back to what I was talking about with creating the 5-year plan. I just sort of sit back and I talk, and lo and behold, the things I say are there on the screen. And I can sit there and I can say, did I really say that? But it is kind of fun because it gives me some freedom to do some things that I couldn't do before. Because I get to the point, I said, well, I said it, I must mean it. I'm not going to erase it. I'm just going to keep going.
Well, I think that is a very essential part of life, where we have things that balance. You have things that are not so nice that have happened, and then you have things in your life now that are the other way. So if you think of the two of them, it's the best way to be is to try to be in balance, sort of a little bit in the middle. And that, I think, is a wonderful sort of perspective that I've gotten out of my interview with you today. You need to know where you're going. You need to have a sense of purpose. and, have some processes, but you also have to have fun. So I'd like to thank you, Nancy, very much for taking the time to be with us today to show us an aspect of you and your approach to life and your business that is truly eye-opening and inspiring. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed this as much as I have. So thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
That's great. So I would like to invite people that if they want to hear more from Nancy or be in contact with her, to go to her website, which is, if you can say it for us, Nancy.
Sure. It's don'twaittillpigsfly.com.
Right. Or your Facebook page. And what would that be?
It's facebook.com/BSU Connector.
Great. Well, thank you again so much. And if any of our listeners want to, get in touch with me or have more information about Global Voice Radio, Nancy, or whatever, you could go to my website, thepassionmotivator.com, or contact me by email at Coach Carol Davies, that's CoachCaroldavies @gmail.com. I'd really love to hear from you. So remember, you can change your life at any time and become the success you want to be. Bye now.
Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern for Only the Best for You with Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio.